Hi, my name is Dree Wicker, and my presentation is about Georgia O'Keeffe and the controversy surrounding her flower paintings. As you can tell on the screen, her flower paintings don't remind you of a flower in an earthly sense, but more in a feminine sense, if you get what I mean. Before I discuss her paintings, let's talk about the artist herself first. Georgia O'Keeffe was born in 1887 on November 15th. She's obviously best known for her flower paintings, but also for her New York skyscrapers and New Mexico landscapes. She's been recognized as the mother of American modernism. Georgia O'Keeffe was already pretty legendary in the 1920s because of her spirit and how she became a female role model. She was finally accepted as a woman from the fine art world because her images were truly powerful. After living in New York for 10 years, she became the highest paid American female artist. After studying at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, she attended an art student league in New York under William Merritt Chase. Her piece Dead Rabbit with Copper Pot impressed the league, but she wasn't confident in herself, so instead she became a commercial artist, then a teacher. During her teaching job at Columbia College in Columbia, South Carolina, Georgia O'Keeffe began a series of abstract charcoal painting drawings and was one of the first American artists to practice pure abstraction, but that is a fact according to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. Anna Pulitzer, a friend of O'Keeffe's and former classmate, had been showing drawings mailed by O'Keeffe, had been receiving drawings mailed by O'Keeffe and showed them to art dealer and photographer Alfred Stieglitz, who in turn exhibited 10 of her drawings without O'Keeffe's knowledge. She confronted him about this, but allowed him to continue to show her work. Eventually, O'Keeffe and Stieglitz began to have a love affair after Stieglitz presented her a private show and gave her a place to live and work. Stieglitz divorced his wife and married Georgia O'Keeffe in 1924. So yes, he was cheating on his lady. The two lived in New York and spent their summers at the family house with Stieglitz. O'Keeffe then started to paint large-scale close-up of flowers. The first one she painted was called Petunia No. 2 in 1925, which looks like a regular flower. Then she paints Black Iris in 1926, which most people thought was a metaphor for female genitalia. O'Keeffe always denied that she painted anything sexual in her paintings. In 1939, she said, "Well, I made you take time to look at what I saw when you took the time to really notice. You wrote about my flower as if I think and see what you see and what you think, but I don't." She always tried to do away with the sexualized readings of her work. Of course, this causes a stir in the art world because her flowers have the anatomy of of a vagina. So to say it doesn't look like that, please stop assuming that it looks like something that it actually might be, will make some question her art even more. Most people thought that her flower paintings were sided with the feminist movement because of the sexual nature they give off. But O'Keeffe wasn't even a part of the movement and didn't want her flowers to be seen as that, because according to O'Keeffe, they're just flowers. So feminists who knew of her flowers were obviously disappointed. Even though she didn't want that type of light on her paintings and just wanted everyone to see them as only flowers, they still made that sexually free impact on female society, letting people know that women and what they have are delicate like like flowers and should be treated as so. But that's what I take from it anyway. Georgia O'Keeffe has over 500 examples in over 100 public collections in Asia, Europe, and North America and Central America. She has nearly 150 oil paintings and nearly 700 sketches and important pastels, watercolors, and charcoals in her collection. O'Keeffe's marriage with Stieglitz was actually pretty rocky. In 1924, he had an affair with Dorothy Norman, which put O'Keeffe in the hospital due to depression. She was hospitalized for 2 months, and Stieglitz was still continuing his relationship with Norman. Due to her being depressed and heartbroken, O'Keeffe didn't make any more art until January 1934, which is when she started on her landscape art in New Mexico. The very colored cliffs of where she lived inspired her most famous landscapes. During this time, her estranged husband suffered a cerebral thrombosis, or a blood clot, and she flew back to New York to be with him in 1946. Stieglitz died on July 13, 1946, and O'Keeffe spent the next 3 years in New York settling his estate. Before he died, Stieglitz had taken 300 plus portraits of O'Keeffe. In 1973, O'Keeffe hired 27-year-old John Bruce Hamilton as a live-in assistant and eventually its caretaker. As O'Keeffe got into her 90s, she began to lose her eyesight and became very frail, but she continued to paint, and Hamilton even taught her to work with clay. O'Keeffe died on March 6, 1986, in Santa Fe. Even after she died, she caused more controversy in her will. In her will, she left her $76 million estate not to her family but to Hamilton, but the case was settled out of court. Do I believe her flowers were something else besides flowers? Of course I do. It's very obvious. It's a vagina. You'd have to be pretty silly to think it only looks like a flower and nothing else. But that's the cool thing about it. I think it shows light on how women bloom just like flowers. This is kind of random, but I thought it was pretty cool. O'Keeffe had some kind of like a cameo in Family Guy. An interviewer asked her what her flowers represented, and she responded with a gesture. That's too inappropriate to say, and I couldn't put a picture on here. But I don't like Family Guy, but I thought it was pretty cool. And that's my presentation on Georgia O'Keeffe.